Hey, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to follow up on our conversation about Gummy's escapades. It amazes me how she can spin such wild stories for attention, but in the end, her actions always seem to backfire on her. Do you think she'll ever learn her lesson? Or will she keep making a fool of herself on YouTube? It really does seem like she's caught in a never-ending pattern of attention-seeking behavior. No matter how many times her actions backfire on her, she just keeps going back to the same old tactics. It's like she's addicted to the drama and the attention, no matter how negative it may be. In a mocking tone, she responds sarcastically, "Ah, how delightful. It seems that Mrs. Gummy has decided to lock up her poor husband in the garden shed and frame me for it. How incredibly cunning and original of her. What a brilliant plan. I'm sure that will end well for her. I mean, how could anyone possibly suspect a sweet little lady like her of such a heinous act?" He rolls her eyes exaggeratedly and continues in a playful tone. "Of course, I must say I'm simply shocked and appalled at Mrs. Gummy's audacity. Locking up her husband in the garden shed and framing me for it. What a cliché move. It's almost too ridiculous to take seriously. I mean, does she really think I'll fall for that? Ha!" With a touch of sarcasm, she plays along with the imaginary scenario. Oh, if Mrs. Gummy were to get away with her little scheme, heaven help us all. Not only would she be celebrating with her cheap cider and beans on toast, but I have no doubt she'd even lock up the moldy tea bags for good measure. Poor Hector would be stuck in the shed, counting the days until someone realized he was missing. What a nightmare. She switches to a mix of Spanish and English. "Oh, si Mrs. Gummy conseguía salirse con la suya de su pequeño complot, Dios nos ayude a todos. No solo estaría celebrando con su sidra barata y tostadas de frijoles, sino que incluso yo diría que hasta encerraría las bolsitas de té con hongos. Pobre Héctor estaría atrapado en el galpón, contando los días hasta que alguien se diera cuenta de que estaba desaparecido. ¡Qué pesadilla!" She continues the story in a mix of English and Arabic. "Oh, if Mrs. Gummy were to get away with her little scheme, Allah help us all. She would be celebrating with her cheap brandy and cheese on toast, but she would even lock up the moldy tea bags for good measure. Poor Hector would be stuck in the shed, counting the days until someone realized he was missing. What a nightmare." Now she begins speaking in English before switching to Hindi. "If Mrs. Gummy were to get away with her little scheme, it would be an absolute nightmare. She would be celebrating with her cheap brandy and cheese on toast, while poor Hector would be locked up in the shed, counting the days until someone noticed he was missing. What a mess that would be." She again begins speaking in English before switching to Greek. "If Mrs. Gummy were to get away with her little scheme, it would be a complete disaster. She would be celebrating with her cheap brandy and cheese on toast, while poor Hector would be locked up in the shed, counting the days until someone noticed he was missing. What a disastrous situation this would be." Continuing the story, she now begins speaking in Greek. "If Mrs. Gummy were to get away with her little scheme, it would be a total mess. She would be celebrating with her cheap brandy and cheese on toast, while poor Hector would be trapped in the shed, counting the lines of mold on the tea bags until someone noticed he was missing. What a mess that would be." She continues speculating, now with a more serious tone. "If Mrs. Gummy truly got away with it, who knows what other despicable acts she'd get up to. She's not exactly known for being rational or empathetic. Maybe she'd start charging people to use the bathroom, or worse, start selling her own line of moldy tea bags online. The possibilities are endless with her." She begins to imagine the worst scenario. If Mrs. Gummy got her hands on Tommy Robinson's diary and access to his garden, oh boy, she'd undoubtedly use the information in the diary to blackmail him or even try to sell it to the highest bidder. And as for his garden, let's just say she wouldn't be satisfied with just taking over the garden. She'd probably start inviting all her friends over for a garden party and charging exorbitant prices for tickets. No one would be safe. She grimaces, picturing the worst-case scenario. If Mrs. Gummy were Tommy Robinson's doctor, that would be absolutely horrendous. She'd probably prescribe him all sorts of quack treatments and charge him a fortune for it. And don't even get me started on her bedside manner. I doubt she'd even bother to wear a stethoscope. It would be an absolute mess. She shakes her head in disbelief. If Mrs. Gummy were to run the Hope Not Hate organization, it would be an absolute disaster. She'd probably start hosting weekly Hope Not Hate rallies, charging outrageous attendance fees, and serving only moldy tea and bean on toast. Plus, her speeches would probably just consist of mindless rants about how great she is. It would be a complete circus. She smirks, imagining a feisty Mrs. Gummy in action. If Mrs. Gummy were to get into a fight with another woman, she'd probably have her husband Hector standing by, ready to back her up. She's the type who would start trouble just to show off in public and prove her dominance. And once the fight starts, she'd bring out all the dirty tricks, hair-pulling, name-calling, the whole 9 yards. She'd want to make sure that person knows who's boss. With a hint of frustration in her voice, she addresses the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, today we unmask the lies of the so-called Gummy Defense League. They try to paint a picture of innocence, but beneath their facade, they're nothing but trouble. Their West Coast swing event in Michigan claims to be non-commercial, yet they charge exorbitant fees for admission. It's clear that they're just in it for the money. The time has come for the truth to be revealed. The Gummy Defense League is nothing more than a scam. She continues her rant with a hint of disdain. The Gummy Defense League is now trying to move into West Coast swinging in Michigan, and they even have the audacity to host a supposedly non-commercial event for their followers. But of course, they can't resist charging extravagant fees for it. And let's not forget, they're serving their signature dish, beans on toast and moldy tea bags. How classy. They're even trying to compete with a younger woman named Isabella at Speaker's Corner. Talk about desperation. She can't hide her disdain for the situation. The Gummy Defense League is clearly desperate to compete with Isabella, who is young and gorgeous, while they're left with their beans on toast and moldy tea bags. Hector being short and chubby adds to the group's inferiority complex compared to the attractive Isabella. They're probably so jealous of her, they can barely contain their envy. They're trying to prove something, but all they're really doing is making fools of themselves. She repeats the same story, this time translated into Spanish. El Gummy Defense League está claramente desesperado por competir con Isabella, quien es joven y hermosa, mientras que ellos solo cuentan con sus frijoles sobre tostadas y té mojoso. Hector, que es bajito y regordeta, agrega el complejo de inferioridad del grupo en comparación con la atractiva Isabella. Probablemente están tan celosos de ella que apenas pueden contener su envidia. Están intentando demostrar algo, pero lo que realmente están haciendo es hacer el ridículo. She smiles deviously, ready to dish out some justice. Oh, now that's a fitting punishment if I ever heard one. Let's make Gummy pay for her crimes with some good old-fashioned beans on toast. A nice plate of it, every day, until she learns her lesson. That'll show her what happens when you step too far over the line. She chuckles at the idea. Oh, I have the perfect punishment for them. Some nice moldy tea bags with a special message written on them just for Gummy and Hector. It'll say something like, eat these and think about what you've done. That ought to teach them a thing or two. Moldy tea bags for the win. She leans in mischievously, a twinkle in her eye. All right, let's get creative with this punishment. I think we should make Gummy and Hector drink a certain number of moldy tea bags. Here's the catch. Let's make it a bit cryptic to keep them guessing. Maybe we can give them just enough information to piece it together like a little puzzle. This is going to be good. She grins, picturing the scene in her mind. I can already picture it now. Isabella with a steely look in her eyes, ready to dispense the punishment. And of course I'd be there to help judge and make sure justice is served. It's the least I can do. But first, let's see what kind of cryptic message we can come up with for those moldy tea bags. This is going to be a punishment they won't forget, that's for sure. She pretends to ponder the scenario. Well, if Gummy were a garden weed, she'd definitely be a stubborn and persistent one. She'd probably start off small and unassuming, trying to blend in with the other plants. But before you know it, she'd be spreading her roots deeper and deeper, taking over the entire garden. You'd try to uproot her, but she'd always come back even stronger, more wily and cunning each time. She's the definition of a pesky weed that just won't quit. Grinning, she switches to Spanish without missing a beat. Now Gummy as a garden weed, a true nuisance. She'd start off small and unassuming, attempting to fit in among the other plants. But before you know it, she'd be sinking her roots deeper and deeper into the ground, taking over the whole garden. You'd try to pull her, only to find her coming back even stronger and more stubborn than before. She's the very definition of a relentless weed that's impossible to eradicate. She furrows her brow considering the question. If Gummy was a direction and she chose to go west, then she'd be a westerly wind, always moving forward, never looking back, and leaving a trail of wreckage in her path. Plus, west has a sort of chaotic energy, just like Gummy herself, always stirring up trouble and causing havoc wherever she goes. So, if she were a direction, Gummy would definitely be west. She nods in agreement. Oh, absolutely. East-west, Gummy chaos, water, steel, bacteria. The perfect combination for a chaotic, unpredictable force of nature. She'd be a true force to be reckoned with. Just imagine it, a chaotic wind from the western direction, a swirling vortex of chaos and destruction. And with water, steel, and bacteria thrown in the mix, you've got a recipe for complete mayhem. It's like a disaster waiting to happen.